Juniors, this is the review for your module quiz on baptism coming this Monday. Some of you did some very fine questions in preparation for this and submitted them to me. Thank you. I'll do my best to recognize the efforts of those who contributed. And as a little added incentive for those of you that are watching this video, you're going to get a little preview on how you can get a couple extra bonus points this quiz. Okay, so let's start. Which is the first stage of the journey towards baptism? Remember, it doesn't start in liturgy, so what is the first stage? Also, remember where there was explicit evidence and where there was implicit evidence for infant baptism. And also, maybe we didn't talk about this clearly enough, but just because you're baptized does not necessarily mean you're guaranteed salvation. Now, that was implicit in many of the things I said, but I never directly said it. So make sure you understand that. And according to our friend Ty Wright, is grace a deserved merit or is it not a deserved merit? Make sure you know that. And also, what does a distorted image of God mean? Is it about seeking power and prestige outside? Make sure you get that lined up. Now, there's a distorted image. And also, well, the original justice and original holiness were two things that we lost, and both of those things lined up with something particular that got damaged in us. Let me say it that way. That might make it easier for you to find in your notes. And also, Tertullian. Why was it that he did not, how you want to say, not accept, but he did not think that infant baptism was a good idea? Why was that? And there we'll have to give a shout out to Michaela Dungan, Kyle Brennan, and Bailey Thune. A person who is not baptized but dies for the faith, is he considered baptized? Not technically, but is he still considered baptized? Think of that one. Are godparents the ones who are primarily responsible for their faith? If not, then who? Now, baptism is necessary for salvation, but if an infant happens to die before they're baptized, does the Catholic Church teach that they are eternally damned? And how about who can baptize other people? Is it only a priest? Ordinarily, I'm speaking. Ordinarily, is it only a priest that can baptize other people? You thank Edward Cole for that question. All right. Remember, which is the fullest sign of baptism? There's different types. First of all, you have to know what the sign is, right? And there are different ways that the sign can be administered. But I said one of them is the fullest sign. Hamartaria, or however you pronounce it, is that Greek word that corresponds to what? You can thank Brooke Graham for that question. And also, I gave you 3 or 4 different church fathers. I told you didn't have to memorize who they were, but one of them was very explicit in that they talked about baptism with water and the Spirit in the Trinitarian formula. Which one was that? And you can thank Genesis Pena for that one. And according to Bella Butler, what does it mean to be born again? Well, not according to Bella, but Bella's good question. According to the Roman Catholic Church, what does it mean to be born again? Also, what do we call a baptized baptized person who is entering the fullness of faith? All right, so they're not going through the RCIA. So what do we call them? And you could thank Amanda Vozella for that. Also, baptism is known as the sacrament of what? Both Locke Fawn and Emily Caruso came up with that one. And what who are the primary teachers of the faith? Is it me, parents, godparents, priest? Hector Diaz and Liz Orlando thought that was a good question. And this one was a pretty good question. What word did the early Christians use to separate the profane from the sacred? And I'm not going to give it to you here because that one is in your notes, but I like that. What word did the Christians use to separate the profane from the sacred? And good job, Annie Moser. In an emergency situation, who can baptize? In an emergency situation, who can baptize? Benjamin Toker thought it was a good question, and so did I. Now, what century was the explicit testimony for infant baptism given? Just a century. You should get that one pretty easy. And in the RCIA process, what do we call a person just prior to their baptism? Okay, moving on. Now, these are going to be multiple response. Water and the word, I baptize you, are which of the following causes? So make sure you know which of those two causes are the water and the word, I baptize you. And infants are baptized into and by whose faith? So their own faith, you should know that one. And baptism has always been, let's say, like a journey, and based on the faith of who? You should know that. And I might blend these two together, but this was a really good question. It came from a young lady that did not want to be recognized, so we'll call her Angela Anonymous. Since the time of the apostles, baptism has always been a blank and a blank. Since the time of the apostles, baptism has always been a blank and a blank. In other words, we don't just let them in, all right? There's a process, so look for that in your notes. All right, on to matching. Gabriella Marcello says, what is it to proclaim the gospel by both word and deed? You should know what that is, the definition of which word. In the early church, people were baptized immediately after this. What is the material cause of the sacrament of baptism? And the stage of RCA that follows baptism. Once you're baptized, are we done with you? What is the stage that follows that? You should know what the efficient cause of the sacrament of baptism is. You should know the definition of original sin, in that it is the loss of original justice and what? And the formal cause of the sacrament of baptism is what? So you know these four causes. And also know what those four causes explain. Why do we use those four causes? They're not proof. They simply explain how something blanks. All right? Okay. Now, I just want to give a real quick special shout out to Brianna Spencer, Andrew Schreffler, Owen Winters, and Sierra Velasquez. They had very well prepared questions, and even though I didn't mark them down specifically, I'm sure there are a few in there that would have matched up with theirs. Now, here's the extra tidbit. This came from Bevan Giles, Carly Chicatano, and Nino Sidoti. So if you can put the stages of the journey of baptism in proper order, in other words, I will list them to you. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you can put them in proper order on the back of the quiz, I'll add 2 points. So you can get a 27 out of 25 on this. All right. And if you leave them blank, no harm, no foul. You lose no points. Okay, guys, good luck. My advice here is to have your notes in front of you as you're listening to this. And then if you do not know one of these, stop the recording, look it up, write it down. If you have all this stuff, you're going to nail this quiz. Now, there were more questions here. Okay, there's probably like maybe 30, 31 questions. I'm only going to ask 23. But nonetheless, since I don't know yet which ones will be on which version, it's best that you have them all down. All right. God bless, guys. Have a great weekend. Talk to you later. Ciao.